The rains had stopped falling in Ouagadougou 3 days ago, but the sky still held its breath. Dust and silence clung to the city like a rumor waiting to erupt. Colonel Ibrahim Traoré stood at the edge of a cracked balcony, overlooking the dim horizon of his capital. Behind him, the presidential council room flickered with unease, soft murmurs from advisors and commanders who had not slept well in weeks. But Traoré's eyes remained locked on a single sheet of paper in his hand. Unfolded. Marked with only one word, handwritten in charcoal. Come. It bore no signature. No threat. No coordinates. But he knew exactly who had sent it. They want me to come alone, he said, finally turning. No escorts. No weapons. The room erupted like a struck drum. Impossible, shouted Commander Sari, pounding his fist on the table. It's a trap, Ibrahim. You walk into that room, and you don't walk out. Traoré set the paper down beside the ancient map of West Africa, one hand trailing the faded border lines. Then that's exactly where I need to be. A chill swept the room. Men shifted in their seats. His chief strategist, Adama Diallo, leaned forward, whispering as if the walls might listen. You think it's Bemba? Traoré nodded once. General Bemba, former head of intelligence. Once loyal, then vanished. Now rumored to be building a shadow network with foreign mercenaries and discontented officers. The kind of betrayal that brewed civil war in weeks, not years. And the kind of man who didn't bluff. He's waiting, Ibrahim said. And he thinks I'll hesitate. That I'll send drones or spies or men I can afford to lose. Diallo's voice trembled. But you won't. No, Ibrahim replied. I'll go myself. There was a pause. And then a whisper. Why? Traoré moved to the window. Because when someone offers you a trap, you can either avoid it, or spring it on them yourself. A dry wind blew through the open glass, lifting the corner of the invitation off the table. The room fell into a hush that felt like history inhaling. Prepare the decoy convoy, Ibrahim said. I'll ride out tonight. Alone. The road to the old colonial outpost outside Zinier was a snaking trail of dust and secrets. It was the kind of place used to bury truth, or dig it up depending on who brought the shovel. Traoré drove himself, no military escort, in an old Land Cruiser with rust on the fenders and no satellite tracking. His only companion was a single leather briefcase locked in the passenger seat. No one knew what was inside. As the sun bled out behind the jagged trees, he arrived. The outpost hadn't changed since the French abandoned it decades ago, 2 watchtowers leaning into the wind, a rusted gate creaking open like the yawn of a vulture. No guards visible. No lights. Just the echo of engines that had long stopped running. He stepped out. Silence greeted him like an old enemy. Then a voice emerged from the dark. You came. Ibrahim turned slowly. Bemba stood there, half-shadowed, hands behind his back. He looked older than before, more bone than muscle now, and his eyes were the color of wet stone. You're either the bravest man in West Africa, Bemba said, stepping forward, or the dumbest. Ibrahim said nothing. Just stared. Bemba smirked. Did you bring the letter? Traoré raised his hand and let the paper flutter to the ground between them. You forgot to sign it. That was the point. They stood 5 feet apart, surrounded by nothing but wind, ghosts, and the weight of shared history. You shouldn't have come alone, Bemba said. I've already mined the walls. The moment you step inside. I know, Traoré interrupted. I also know you didn't come alone either. Bemba tilted his head. What do you think this is, Colonel? A duel? I invited you here to offer you a choice. Then speak. Behind the outpost, a soft glow flared, generators humming to life. In the trees, hidden figures stepped into sight. Not soldiers. Not mercenaries. Men in civilian clothes. And among them, familiar faces, officers from Traoré's own ranks. He inhaled. Carefully. Bemba watched his reaction with glee. See them? That's what happens when you silence too many, too soon. You breed more traitors than you eliminate. Traoré's face didn't change. They're not here to kill you, Bemba continued. They're here to listen. You can call off the war now. Step down. Let the country breathe before it breaks. And he gestured grandly, I'll make sure your name is remembered. With dignity. A pause. Then Ibrahim spoke, calm and low. You think I walked into your trap? He stepped closer. But I laid it myself. Suddenly, headlights lit up the tree lane behind Bemba. Dozens of vehicles. Not military, but press vans. Journalists. Cameramen. International observers. Live streams. The men in civilian clothes backed away in confusion. You said you wanted witnesses, Ibrahim said softly. So I brought them. Bemba froze. Traoré raised his voice. Tell them, Bemba. Tell them what you planned for your own people. For the army. For your president. The trap had sprung, but not on Ibrahim. It was the others who couldn't move now. And as the flash of camera bulbs flickered like lightning across the dirt, the game changed. Bemba didn't flinch, not yet. But Traoré saw it, the subtle shift in his breathing, the flicker in his left eye. The former intelligence chief had spent years studying the psychology of war, how to bend the will of nations with nothing more than fear. But now, in front of a sea of unexpected cameras and blinking red lights, his tongue hesitated. You brought the press, Bemba said slowly, as if the words hurt. International media. Foreign eyes. They've been asking for transparency, Traoré replied. Tonight, I gave them a front row seat. The glow of camera rigs painted the courtyard in sterile white light. Murmurs rose from the hidden faces in the crowd, officers who'd followed Bemba, believing this was a quiet coup, a bloodless demand behind closed doors. Instead, they were now part of a broadcast that would stretch from Nairobi to Paris. Bemba raised his voice, trying to regain control. Ibrahim, this isn't how we solve national wounds. Not by humiliating each other in front of outsiders. No, Traoré said. You solve them by not creating them in the first place. He stepped forward. You sent death squads into Djibo. You let arms slip across the border into mercenary hands. You poisoned men in my cabinet. And then you sent a letter, thinking you still held the upper hand. Gasps. Audible. Sharp. One of the cameras panned in on Bemba's face. Another captured the reaction of the soldiers in plain clothes, now shifting uncomfortably, some hiding their insignias. You don't get to walk away from this one, Traoré continued. Not with a handshake. Not with a deal. Bemba's composure cracked. He lunged forward, less a threat than a desperate move, and hissed into Ibrahim's ear. You think this ends with me? You've no idea who else is watching. They're in your own war council. You walk out of here, you'll have a knife waiting in your tea. Traoré didn't blink. I know, he said. And I've already started boiling the kettle. He stepped back, addressing the crowd now. To those of you who came here believing you were saving the country, look again. This is what treason looks like in daylight. It lies. It manipulates. It hides behind words like peace and transition. But I don't care what mask it wears, I will burn it off. Some of the men looked away. Others froze, caught between loyalty and the raw weight of public exposure. Traoré turned to a young officer standing near Bemba's flank, Captain Wara, a former academy star. His eyes were conflicted. You served with me at Kédougou, Traoré said. Tell them. Did I ever turn my back on the people? Wara's jaw tensed. He didn't answer immediately. All eyes fell on him. Then, softly, almost as if exhaling guilt, he said, No, you didn't. Bemba stared at him in disbelief. Another voice chimed in, Lieutenant Namwi. He didn't turn. You did. The unraveling began like a fault line cracking. Bemba pulled a pistol from beneath his coat. The cameras caught it. Shouts erupted. Some ducked. Some ran. But Traoré didn't move. His eyes were locked on Bemba. "You pull that trigger," he said, "and you seal your fate. Not just in this courtyard, but in the memory of every Burkinabe watching." A pause. Then Bemba lowered the gun. Just slightly. But enough. Traoré motioned with a flick of his wrist. From the darkness behind the press vans, a team of special forces emerged, silent, armed, precise. They hadn't been sent to kill. Only to observe. Until now. Bemba was disarmed in seconds. "I knew you'd bring a weapon," Ibrahim said. "And I knew you'd hesitate." Bemba looked up at him, breathing heavy, face smeared with sweat and disbelief. "You think you've won?" "No," Traoré said. "I think I've just begun." He turned to the cameras. "To the people watching, this is not just about one man. This is about a country that refuses to be sold. That refuses to be ruled by fear. I walked into this trap because I wanted every Burkinabe to see who still walks out." A cheer rose, not from soldiers, not yet, but from a small group of villagers gathered just outside the gates. Somehow, word had spread. And more were arriving. "You were right about one thing, Bemba," Traoré said, looking down at him now kneeling in cuffs. "This is bigger than you." He stepped back, let his officers take the traitor away. And then the rain began. Not heavy, but enough to dampen the dust. Traoré stood beneath it, eyes to the sky. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. Because this was not victory. This was a warning. The real trap had just been sprung, and the real enemy wasn't behind him. It was ahead. The next morning, Ouagadougou felt different. The sun rose over the city like it was trying to apologize for everything the night had revealed. But Traoré didn't look at the sky. He was looking at a screen, live drone footage from the south. Convoys. 3 of them. Unmarked. Slipping through border paths near under cloud cover, moving with precision only mercenaries or trained ex-military could manage. They weren't headed for an open battle. They were surgical. Coordinated. Meant to disappear. "They waited for your signal to die," said Diallo, tapping the screen. "No," Traoré muttered. "They waited to see if I would die first." He'd known the coup attempt was bigger than Bemba. But he hadn't expected it to evolve overnight, into something colder, quieter. A network that didn't need to raise guns to cut out a government. Just withdraw loyalty. He was losing the South. Losing supply routes. And if that happened, Ouagadougou would be a city surrounded. Diallo leaned closer. "Sir, we need to make arrests. Raids. Show force." "No," Ibrahim said, standing. "That's exactly what they want. I show fear, they multiply. I show desperation, they circle in." He stepped into the war room, where maps lined the walls and black pins outnumbered red. Each pin meant suspicion. Each red meant betrayal confirmed. The room had more red than comfort could allow. He turned to his remaining generals. "Close the borders. Lock down the ports. But not with troops, announce a nationwide security drill. Make it look internal. Civil, calm." General Zongo raised an eyebrow. "And the real plan?" "I'm leaving the capital again." The silence came like a slap. "Are you mad?" Diallo said. "After last night? They'll know you're hunting." "I want them to know," Traoré said. "Let the wolves smell blood in the woods." Zongo took a step forward. "Who do you suspect?" Ibrahim paused. Then pointed, at the wall. "At a name. Colonel Yakuba Sanin. Chief of Communications. Former friend. Trusted voice inside the presidential compound. He's the one who told Bemba I'd come alone." "No one else knew," Traoré said. He didn't know I was baiting the trap. Diallo's voice dropped. He's in the council room. Right now. I know. Traoré entered without warning. The council members rose as he walked in, still wet from his early drive, dust on his boots. Yakuba stood at the far end, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. Sit, Ibrahim ordered. No one moved. Except Yakuba, who remained standing. I heard you survived, he said softly. The whole country's talking. Good, Traoré said. Let them talk. While I listen. He tossed a flash drive onto the table. Inside this are last night's intercepted communications. Including a message from a sat phone registered to your brother in Abidjan. Yakuba's smile flickered. I don't have a brother in Abidjan, he said too quickly. Exactly, Ibrahim replied. A beat. I trusted you, Yakuba. I still serve. No, Traoré interrupted. You serve the future. But the problem is, you thought I wouldn't be part of it. The council remained silent. Even Zongo, who'd once stood by Yakuba during the mutiny in Gala, didn't speak. I want to know how deep it goes, Ibrahim said. Who else? What they planned. What promises were made. Yakuba didn't move. But in his eyes, something changed. The bravado faltered. Then, slowly, he reached into his coat pocket. 3 council guards flinched, hands on holsters. But he only pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table. A list. Names. Units. Locations. Traoré picked it up, read the first few entries, and froze. The handwriting wasn't Yakuba's. It was Bemba's. These are the next moves, Yakuba said quietly. I was supposed to trigger them tonight if you didn't return. I didn't expect cameras. Why betray him now? Diallo asked coldly. Yakuba exhaled. Because he stopped fighting for the country. And started fighting just to win. Traoré didn't nod. He didn't forgive. But he made a decision. You'll stay in custody. Quietly. No announcement. And the others? Yakuba asked. Some of them are waiting. Still loyal, to whoever looks strongest. Then I'll give them something to look at. That night, Traoré stood on national television. No teleprompter. No crowd. Just him. A single microphone. And a camera that beamed his face into every screen from Ouagadougou to Banfora. No nation survives because its enemies fail. It survives because its people refuse to fall. He paused. There are those who believe Burkina Faso is fragile. That we are a country waiting to be taken. But let me be clear, we are not weak. We are wounded. And we are healing. You cannot conquer people who have nothing left but their dignity, and refuse to trade it. He looked into the camera like it was an old friend. To those who betrayed us, your names are known. Your maps have been burned. You no longer walk among civilians. You are targets. A pause. To those who stayed loyal, thank you. The storm is not over. But neither is our resolve. He stepped back. And the screen faded to black. But elsewhere, deep in a villa hidden behind citrus groves on the border, an encrypted phone rang. A man answered. A French accent responded. It didn't work. The man in the villa whispered, it was never supposed to. We were just testing his reach. And? He's stronger than we thought. A pause. Then we'll need a bigger storm. A week later, the air over the capital thickened, not with smoke or sirens, but with a tension too still to be natural. You could feel it in the markets, where even children's laughter sounded forced. In mosques, where prayers were longer. And in the compound of the Presidential Guard, where rifles were cleaned twice as often, and men slept with boots on. Ibrahim Traoré stood alone on the balcony of his private quarters, facing the western skyline. The sun was bleeding again. And that always meant change was coming. Diallo stepped in, holding a fresh folder. Intercepted chatter. We finally traced the southern mercenary group. Ibrahim didn't turn. Where? Mali. They're massing at the border town of Sikasso. No flags. Just weapons. And backing. Confirmed foreign support. We can't say which country, not officially. But, Diallo's hesitation was loud. Same tactics we saw in other West African destabilizations. Proxy war. Quiet funding. Traoré clenched his jaw. And our own. The southern officers are fractured. Some are waiting for orders. Others, waiting to see who bleeds first. It was exactly what Traoré feared. The trap hadn't been about him. It was about creating doubt. Fracture the loyalties. Make the people believe no one was clean. Even him. Any response from the African Union? He asked. Muted, Diallo said. Too many are watching to see if you survive before they commit. Traoré finally turned, his eyes darker than the skyline behind him. Then it's time we send a message they can't ignore. By midnight, the plan was in motion. It wasn't military. Not at first. It was symbolic. A train, rusted and used for 5 years, was pulled from the Ouagadougou rail yard. Repainted overnight. Stamped with the national seal. And loaded with food, medicine, water, and books. Destination, Bobo Dioulasso. The symbolism was surgical. That city had seen protests. Whispers of rebellion. But it also had roots, a deep cultural spine that tied the soul of the nation together. As the train left the station, people lined the tracks. Silent. Watching. And behind the train, armored convoys rolled, not in attack, but in protection. Soldiers rode alongside humanitarian aid. Cameras followed. No threats. No speeches. Just action. But not everyone applauded. Inside a concrete safehouse along the Ghanaian border, a call ended with a single sentence. He's using peace as bait. The man who received the message was a former colonel, court-martialed years ago. Now, he wore no rank, only the confidence of a man with foreign promises in his back pocket. We attack before he consolidates, he said. His men nodded. They had already planted saboteurs in the eastern province of Kapila. A key bridge was rigged. An assassination attempt was being readied, small arms fired during a rally. They didn't need to win the war. Just break the myth that Traoré was untouchable. They called it the Shatter Day. And it was set for 48 hours. Traoré knew it. Not by chance. But because he had built the lie himself. The humanitarian train was a decoy. The rally planned in Kapila. A ghost. The real event, a classified Security Council meeting, was already underway in the basement of a schoolhouse in the village of Nuna. There, with the map spread wide, he outlined the operation. They expect me in Kapila, he said. So they've planted their trap there. But they'll find an empty podium and 1,000 decoy phones live streaming static. Zongo, reviewing troop placement, asked, what about the bridge sabotage? Let them detonate it, Traoré said. Eyes turned to him in shock. We'll be watching from above. Satellite confirms 24 men are stationed nearby, waiting to ambush our engineers after the blast. Baiting again? Diallo asked. Not bait, Ibrahim said. Proof. The council nodded. He was no longer just leading. He was hunting. On the day of the supposed assassination, live footage of the Kapila rally began streaming across social media, but the screen glitched. Then flickered. Then cut to drone footage of mercenaries circling an empty tent. A voiceover followed, Traoré himself. If you're watching this, you've already failed. Simultaneously, the Nuna school basement turned command center issued an order. 3 simultaneous raids. 1 on the eastern border, catching saboteurs in the act. 1 in the city of Banfora, arresting a weapons supplier embedded in a telecom firm. And the third, on the villa outside Zinier, where Yakuba's list had ended. That villa belonged to a man the world hadn't yet seen. Until now. Live footage showed him cuffed, flanked by special forces, and dragged to a waiting truck. His face. A dual citizen of a foreign power. Former contractor. Allegedly retired. And now, exposed on every television in West Africa. In the capital, Traoré stood before the press once again. This time, no script. Burkina Faso is not a chessboard, he said. It's a home. And I am not your pawn. I am not your king. I am your wall. And I do not fall quietly. Then he held up a document, signed admissions from the captured mercenaries. Each line implicating foreign money, local traitors, and a coordinated effort to fracture the state. He set it down gently. And looked straight at the lens. I walked into their trap, he said. But I didn't walk in blind. I walked in carrying fire. A long silence. Then, and I intend to burn out every last shadow. The fire didn't come with flames. It came with names. By morning, over 300 sealed files were dispatched to regional commanders, court officials, and anti-corruption units. Each one held verified confessions, traced wire transfers, digital fingerprints, and voice logs. Traoré hadn't just caught the saboteurs. He had documented every move they made, and who whispered in their ears. The public didn't get details. Not yet. What they got was something rarer. Clarity. Posters appeared overnight, in dusty towns and crowded marketplaces. Simple and white with bold black letters. The trap failed. Burkina lives. We are still here. In the capital, soldiers once suspected of wavering stood in silence as Traoré walked through their ranks, not in a parade, but in inspection. Eye to eye. Man to man. And in those quiet moments, when no speeches were made and no orders were barked, something ancient passed between them. A choice. And this time, most of them chose loyalty. Still, he didn't rest. Traoré held a private meeting that afternoon, just 6 people. Trusted commanders, Diallo, Zongo, and 2 civilian advisors. The room had no windows. No phones. Just the dull hum of overhead light. He laid out 3 folders. This is what's next, he said. The first folder contained aerial photos of a private airstrip in the north, newly paved. Satellite images showed unregistered flights over the last 6 months, consistent with foreign weapons runs. The second folder had transcripts of a UN official's secret meetings with 2 former junta members, cloaked under humanitarian discussions. But the locations were always rural, and always close to training camps. The third folder was blank. What's this? Zongo asked. Traoré stared at it. The ghost file. Diallo narrowed his eyes. You mean the one person we still can't confirm? Yes, Ibrahim said. Someone is leaking council discussions. Bemba wasn't working alone. And it wasn't Yakuba. There's someone else, someone still inside. The room darkened with that possibility. So we can't celebrate yet? One advisor asked. Burkina Faso cannot afford celebrations, Traoré said. Not until the infection is cut out, root and nerve. He stood. I walked into their trap to flush them out. But I've seen enough traps now to recognize one final truth. The men leaned in. The most dangerous traitors are the ones who don't act until you stop watching. The next 2 weeks were a storm with no thunder. Diplomatic envoys arrived. Peace declarations were offered. International headlines softened, Traoré holds on, Burkina Faso pushes back, unrest avoided for now. But Traoré didn't smile. Because the ghost hadn't revealed itself. Instead, it watched. One morning, a whisper reached him, a discreet message slipped into the hands of a bodyguard. Traoré opened it. One line. Your mistake is believing the fire ends with them. He said nothing. Burned the note in a candle. then walked out. That evening, Ibrahim addressed the nation one last time. No stage. No official lighting. Just a single camera, set outside the ruins of a burned-down radio station from the revolution days. Symbolic. Raw. He wore his uniform. But no decorations. No medals. Just the plain truth of a man who had seen the edge of collapse and kept walking. I have never asked you to follow me, he began. Only to walk beside me. He paused. I was sent an invitation to die. And I went. Not because I wished to fall, but because I needed the country to see who rises with me. I have walked through betrayal, smiled at men who hid knives, and swallowed the poison of doubt so that you wouldn't have to. His eyes narrowed. But I tell you this, every trap they lay, I will answer with truth. Every betrayal, with clarity. And if they bury me, let them know, I will rise again in 100 voices, from Wahaguya to the forests of Palma. He stepped closer to the camera. You cannot kill a people who have decided not to kneel. And then. A final twist. He raised the third folder. The blank one. I know you're watching, he said. The one still hiding. The one who sat beside me and smiled. He opened the folder. Still blank. But when I find you, I won't shout. I won't scream. I'll sit you down and ask just one question. A long pause. Why did you think I'd break? He closed the folder. And walked away. That night, in a luxury apartment on the edge of the city, a phone rang. A voice answered, tense. He knows. Another voice replied, cold and amused. He always did. That's why we failed. Click. No trace. But across the country, bonfires began. Small ones. Villagers lighting fires in circles, singing old songs of resistance. Mothers holding children tight. Elders whispering about the old spirits returning. No one declared victory. Because it wasn't time for that. But the people understood. Their president had not only walked into the trap. He had made the fire burn brighter than the betrayal ever could. And that fire would stay. Long after the names were forgotten. Long after the shadows ran. And long after the world stopped watching.